cautious investigators will hesitate to challenge the common belief that Robert Blake was killed by lightning or by some profound nervous shock derived from an electrical discharge. It is true that the window he faced was unbroken, but nature has shown herself capable of many freakish performances. The expression on his face may easily have arisen from some obscure muscular source unrelated to anything he saw, while the entries in his diary are clearly the result of a fantastic imagination, aroused by certain local superstitions and by certain old matters he had uncovered. As for the anomalous conditions at the deserted church of Federal Hill, the shrewd analyst is not slow in attributing them to some charlatanry, conscious or unconscious, with at least some of which Blake was secretly connected. Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Andrew Carr, and welcome to the Carr-Quest of H.P. Lovecraft. And today we will be discussing the story, The Haunter of the Dark. So, this episode's going to be very interesting. One is a fact about this story, which we'll get into in a minute. Two, we have a special guest this episode. She's not with me at the present moment, to respect her pronouns, but she's not here. But she did record a little video discussing her thoughts on the story. So, that being said, and we'll get to that towards the end. The Haunter of the Dark. This is a pretty good story. I really like. It kind of goes back to the outsider's sense of gothicness. It reminds me. I think when I was reading the story with our special guest, I mentioned that it did strike me as very similar to The Outsider. So what's the story? So the story is about this guy named Robert Blake, who, by the way, Robert Blake, I think there's some other stories involving this Robert Blake character, but Robert Blake is pretty much Robert Bloch. And if Robert Bloch, that name sounds familiar, it's because I think Robert Bloch was the guy who wrote the book, the original book, for Psycho, which would become the famous Alfred Hitchcock film. So that's cool that he knew Lovecraft in life. So basically, Robert Blake moves to Federal Hill, I think it's called, or College Hill, I can't remember. I think it's Federal Hill. And he moves there, and he sees in the distance from the town, he sees this dark church, and he's fascinated by it. And he goes and he investigates the church. And as all Lovecraft stories go, bad stuff happens. Some knowledge is uncovered, things are seen, madness ultimately will ensue. So you kind of know this by now, several episodes in. So yeah, it's a good story. I really like how it builds and builds and builds, kind of like a Color Out of Space in that way, and that for the most part, I understood what was going on, even with some of Lovecraft's, writing, thesaurus use and whatnot. Now, I mentioned that there was a particular reason why the story is so interesting, and it is kind of a somewhat tragic fact. This was the last story. The Haunter of the Dark is the last story H.P. Lovecraft wrote before he died. And I think it's as a swan song of Lovecraft, as the last story, it's a pretty fitting exit, and I think that it tackles the same themes that Lovecraft handled. And that Lovecraft's always handled, and he continues to do it well here. His sense of atmosphere, his sense of escalation, it's all here, and it's pretty good. And I think it's a very fitting send-off to Lovecraft. And as for Lovecraft connections, there's references to So like there's something called the Shining Trapezahedron. I'm not sure if that comes back into this story. The Haunter of the Dark. I had theories as to who the Haunter of the Dark was. I don't know if it's actually confirmed. Um, I don't want to get into my theories because I don't want to spoil the story. But there's references towards the end and throughout. There's the Necronomicon. There's several of there's Yuggoth and Shuggai. Nyarlathotep's mentioned. There's a couple other species and characters and eldritch gods mentioned in this story. So yeah, so Haunter of the Dark. Sorry if this review seems pretty rushed, but gotta get it out. Yeah, I like it. I think it's a good creepy story. It's very very gothic. So if you like gothic, you'll probably dig this. And if you're a Lovecraft fan, and if you haven't read it already, which I'm not sure. Well, I'm a Lovecraft fan, and I haven't read it until today and tonight. It's a worthy send-off to Howard Phillips Lovecraft. But just because it's the send-off to Howard Phillips Lovecraft as he shuffled off this mortal coil doesn't mean that this series is over. We got like 4 more stories left, I think. Let me check real quick. Just so yeah, 4 more stories. We got 4 more stories left, so don't worry, the Carr-Quest H.P. Lovecraft won't be going anywhere, at least for 4, technically 5 more episodes. So, Haunter of the Dark. On a tier list, I'd probably give it a high A. Yeah. So next time on the Carr-Quest to H.P. Lovecraft, we will be going into The Thing on the Doorstep. So until then, see ya. Oh, before I go, here's our special guest presenting Knight Spital.
Hello, everyone. How's it going? My name is Knight, and I just want to make a huge shout out to my friend Andrew Carr for letting me collaborate with him on this little video special. So for tonight, I wanted to discuss my thoughts on a work of literature made by the author known by H.P. Lovecraft. And the name of this book is called the Haunted of the Dark. And I actually got to say, so what I found out, so me and Andrew got to read about this. Read about this earlier today, and I actually was really impressed with it. I would say, because I found out that this actually was the most recent, or the most recent, or like the last book that H.P. Lovecraft published before he passed away. And the whole idea about this guy going into a church and finding out that there was a cult that took place in this church, is that, like, I found that very fascinating to me, or it's like I found that very fascinating. Like, it was very interesting to kind of just read about the events that were going on, and like kind of like the whole backstory behind what this church was like. In a way, like the whole premise of like the idea of the writer going into this church, is that, like, in a way, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the premise that happened in the 2012 movie The Woman in Black with Daniel Radcliffe, because in a way it's kind of like a similar idea that movie kind of had like a premise of. It's kind of like the like, because there's something that goes on in a house, and the character of Daniel Radcliffe kind of goes to this house to investigate what happened, and it's like, in a way, it's kind of like because in a way it kind of reminded me about that a little bit. I thought that was very interesting. I would also like to point out I also would want to point out about the quote uh, that was published in the beginning of the novel, which talked uh, about like the like the like the planets in the dark universe, kind of just like um well, I guess it's kind of hard for me to actually like explain like what it is that happens, but it was told in a way that was very it was very interesting because it really made me think about like what kind of like multiple universes, or like even like the universe that we live in today. It's kind of like the whole idea of like what happens like with the planets itself. But yeah, I mean, I just found that very interesting. And I found, because like a lot of the work that I find of H.P. Lovecraft, because it actually was Andrew that first told me about H.P. Lovecraft, and like I was actually very intrigued on what it was like, especially with the character of Cthulhu too, because like that's I feel like that's the one character I know the most about from H.P. Lovecraft's work. And I do know, like reading a little bit, a bit from reading a bit from this novel, is that like I do know that there was a inclusion of Cthulhu's character to it, so that I thought was really interesting. But yeah, I mean, like I really feel I really feel like this was a really fascinating, a really fascinating novel to read about, and like I was very intrigued to learn more about the works of H.P. Lovecraft. But yeah, but yeah, yeah. So thank you guys, thank you guys for watching my review, and thank you, Andrew, for letting me take part in this collaboration with you. But yeah, I'm very happy to have taken part in this collaboration. But yeah, I will. Yeah, so that's it for tonight. I'll hope to see you all the next time I do a collaboration with Andrew. But yeah, take care, everyone, and have a nice night. Goodbye.